We ask people to, instead of making a step forward, we ask them to make a leap. And for some people, it's too far. It's too far of a jump because if they were to take that leap, take that jump, they're thinking, I can't make it. I'm going to fall off the edge of the cliff. I'm going to fall into the pit of spikes. I'm going to not be able to recover. And there's this beautiful picture that I saw. I think it was a meme or a GIF, whatever these youngsters call it, Tanya, these days. And the person, and there's two people, one on one side of there's one person on one edge, and there's another person on the other edge, and there's no bridge. The bridge is damaged. One person reaches out and the person's like, just jump. And the other person who's being told to jump, they're looking at the person and they're looking at the floor. And in their mind, they're like, I just can't make it. Where the other person is looking straight at that person and just saying, I got you. How difficult do you think it is for people to trust again after being so hurt from their past?
Yeah, if that was a message that they never got, that I am stable, solid, reliable, and I got you, if that was something that was missed in their childhood, and very unlikely that it was missed on purpose, but very likely that their caregivers were just acting from their own underdeveloped emotional immaturity, then it's going to be really hard to do that once they leave the family unit and try to go and make their way in the world. It's going to be really hard to be able to accept that hand that's being extended. And we might push it away, we might be violent to it, we might do a lot of things to it because we don't trust that it's actually going to have us. And we can kind of bring this metaphor back into real life. It's the person that might be in a relationship but actually staying quite distant. Maybe that means there's sort of a hyper independence where they're doing most things on their own. They don't want to take the next step and, whatever that means for the progression of the relationship. They don't want to move in, they don't want to get engaged, whatever the thing is. But they find a way of sort of being together but separate because they can't fully put their heart there, put their heart on the line. What if it gets crushed? What if it gets damaged? And we can certainly move through life with those types of fears and questions. And people like Brene Brown would suggest that when we go through life in that way, we're never going to have anything meaningful in our lives. We need that vulnerability to be intimate and to create partnerships. And if you didn't have that modeled to you or taught to you as a child, it is healable. Whatever patterns are playing out now in your relationships for folks listening and watching, it's something that you learned over time. It was something that you practiced well, whether it was avoiding or being really eagerly attached to someone. It's something that you learned to as a way of coping with your situation when you were young. And because it was learned, it's something that can be unlearned. And so approaching that type of unlearning, I think, needs to start with a willingness where you can say to yourself, you know what, I'm willing to change things inside myself. Or if you're not there yet, I'm willing to consider changing things within myself. And just let that be a little mantra. It's like this, I'm, uh, you see a store, you're like, do I want to go in? Maybe after I have lunch, I'll go in. But after a while of telling yourself, I'm willing to consider changing, you can, you'll know that, oh, actually, now there's a willingness to do it. And you can let that be the mantra then for the next little while. I'm willing to change within myself. And eventually, then you're just ready and you can just make the changes and whatever that looks like. If you need professional help, if you can do it on your own.
How scary do you think being confronted with that change is for the person who maybe was aware that they needed to change and they just chose to ignore it, or that someone brings it to their attention and now it's their understanding that, okay, this is a pillar of my relationship that I need to resolve sooner than later?
Hmm. Yeah. So there's a fear, I think, around the unknown. That would be a really common general thing to say. And then there's another layer in this. So the unknown being, if I do commit and trust and take that leap, if I do that, I don't know what's going to happen next because I've never had that. I've never had that experience. So there's the fear of the unknown. What does that mean? And then also there's the fear of, well, what if I get hurt? What if we don't know, right? That is a possibility, but who knows? But then there's another layer to this, which is how the unconscious mind prefers the status quo, even though it may not be the most helpful, productive, growth oriented in terms of your own personal development, but because it's comfortable, because it's always been that way. And so our unconscious minds will choose the path of least resistance. And so not only do we need to override these conscious fears of like, oh, what if something happens, but also we have to override this unconscious, deep, anchored desire to stay exactly as we are. So that's hella scary. I mean, I don't, on a scale, I'd put it at like a 10 out of 10 scary.